So now we move on to method fishing. Now, method fishing is subtly different from the open-ended swim feeder technique, because whereas with the open-ended swim feeder we were trying to mix soft ground bait that explodes out the feeder, with the method what we're trying to do is make a very hard ball of ground bait that will remain intact on the bottom, so the fish literally have to attack it to break it apart and get at what's inside. So the mix is subtly different. I'll show you the ingredients. I'm basically using exactly the same ground bait mix, which is the marine pellet ground bait that you saw earlier on. The difference being that I've added more water to it, so it's a much stiffer mix. And I've also added a couple of ingredients that help to stiffen the mix up even further, so it really is quite firm and stodgy. So let's have a look at what's inside. I've mentioned the marine pellet ground bait, but what I've also got is hemp, some mixed particles. Now these are a very important ingredient. Basically this is crushed up particles and nuts, tiny fragments, little pulses and seeds, and they come in a very rich sweet jelly which helps to bind the mix together. So I put a whole tin of these mixed particles into the mix and they perform a very important role. I've got some boilies. These are going to be my hook bait. These are marine halibut boilies in 10mm size. So they're actually quite small. They're perfect for this mix. Nice fishy bait, good for the hook, good to include in the mix. And then of course, we've got a mixture of pellets, marine halibut pellets. I've got all sorts of sizes in here. I've got 3mm, 4mm, 6mm and 10mm. So let's have a look at a handful of the mix first of all. And I'll take a handful of it. Now look at what's in here. For a start off, the ground bait mix is much damper. That means it'll hold together better. But if you look inside this ball of bait, you've got all sorts of different food items. You've got 10mm boilies, particles of all shapes and sizes, hemp, little pulses and seeds. You've got pellets of different sizes. In other words, the fish are not going to get too used to a food item of any one particular size. There's a real variety in there, and that makes it a very interesting ball of bait for a carp. It won't be able to resist breaking this ball open to get at all the little goodies inside, and therein lies its fatal mistake. This is a method feeder rod. It's made by my own company, Total Fishing Gear. It's called the Grunt. It's the Mark II version. It's actually a method feeder rod. Now bear in mind that with the method feeder we're throwing a very big heavy ball of ground bait. There are two problems. If you use a regular feeder rod you will get away with it, but there is a danger because of the speed of the action that you'll break the ball of ground bait up in flight. So for dedicated method feeder fishing I always favour a rod with a slightly slower action. Not massively so, but slightly slower, that loads slower when you cast it, and that way you'll always keep that ball of ground bait intact. This is the rod for the job. This is called the Grunt. It's the Mark II version of it, the 12-foot method feeder one by my own company, Total Fishing Gear. Now this is an exceptional method feeder rod, though I say so myself, and I'm bound to be biased, but there's a lot of thought gone into its construction. It's a very powerful rod. It will cope with main lines between 6 and 9 pounds plus, and I can tell you that you can use 12-pound line with this rod and it won't be overloaded. It really is very, very powerful. It's good for taming carp quickly. It's good for throwing very, very heavy feeders. It will cope with all of the rigours of this very difficult style of fishing. It's hard on tackle, you know, so you need to use gear that's going to be up to the job. The reel's the same model, but I've upped the strength of the line. I've gone from 8 pounds up to 10 pounds breaking strain. And if we look down at this end, you'll see another important difference. Now, we've developed a special quiver tip for this style of fishing. We're the only company to do this currently as I make this DVD. When you're method feeder fishing, you're either using heavier, larger diameter lines, or you might be using shock leaders. And those larger diameter lines have to pass through the rod rings. With a traditional quiver tip, you're not going to do that. So the guides on this quiver tip have been made larger. They're what we call snake guides. Now the reason for that is that heavier lines will pass through those guides much more easily. And it also means that if you want to, and you're going for ultimate distance, and you need to say use a shock leader, The shock leader knot will pass through the guides without catching. Now you can't do that with a normal quiver rod. So this quiver tip has been tailor designed for method style heavy feeder fishing. And it's actually the ideal thing to complement the rod. It's quite special.